By the autumn of 1940, Berlin had been considered untouchable by air raids. The city, heart of the Third Reich, was shielded by the Luftwaffe and anti-aircraft defenses, while Hitler and his generals assumed that British strategic bombing capabilities were limited. Yet intelligence reports indicated a shift. The Royal Air Force, RAF, under Air Chief Marshal Sir Charles Portal and operational direction of Arthur Bomber Harris, had begun planning deeper raids into German territory. German High Command, OKW under Wilhelm Keitel, and Oberkommando des Heers, led by Franz Halder, received intercepted communications and reconnaissance reports with skepticism. General Halder wrote in his war diary on October 5, 1940, "It is improbable that the British possess the ability to strike Berlin directly. Our defenses remain formidable and the Luftwaffe is vigilant." Despite such confidence, preparations were underway. Anti-aircraft batteries were positioned across Berlin, fighter squadrons were placed on alert, and the Flak Regiment 1 was ready to intercept any incoming bombers. Yet, many of Hitler's generals privately questioned the effectiveness of these measures. Field Marshal Walther von Brauchitsch expressed unease. "We are confident, but one miscalculation could bring catastrophe to the Reich's heart. Still, we must trust in our air defenses." On the night of November 18, 1940, British bombers approached Berlin in the first major raid. Radar operators and night observers in Berlin's Luftwaffe towers detected formations of Handley Page Hampton and Vickers Wellington bombers crossing the North Sea. Initial reports were met with disbelief. Keitel, in his command bunker, reportedly muttered, "Impossible, they would never risk such a flight." As the first bombs fell over the city, panic and confusion swept through the German high command. Flak batteries opened fire, but the night's darkness, combined with navigation challenges and decoy maneuvers by the RAF, limited their effectiveness. General Halder documented, "The city shakes beneath us." Reports are contradictory. Some say damage is minimal, others describe fires spreading across districts. The audacity of this attack is staggering. Hitler, informed immediately, reacted with fury. He summoned Keitel, Rieder, and other top officers to the Führer's bunker. Witnesses describe his voice rising in anger. "How dare they strike Berlin? Our enemies are blind fools, yet they reach our capital with impunity. This insult will not go unanswered." Meanwhile, communications with field commanders became frantic as generals struggled to assess damage and coordinate emergency response. German generals, however, displayed a mixture of panic and professionalism. General Gerd von Rundstedt, commanding Army Group A, noted in a private memo, "The British audacity is extraordinary. Our forces must not underestimate the strategic effect of morale. Berlin has been struck. Public fear is as dangerous as the bombs themselves." Reports from the Kriegsmarine indicated heightened alert in the North Sea ports, anticipating potential attacks on critical infrastructure. Diaries from officers in Berlin reveal moments of disbelief and frustration. Colonel Joachim von Kortzfleisch wrote, "The fires rage. Smoke climbs into the sky. One cannot comprehend that our enemy has reached us with such precision. I feel both anger and shame." Other generals convened emergency councils, coordinating firefighting, evacuation of critical records, and defense reinforcement. The British raid inflicted damage on industrial areas, railways, and residential zones. Civilian panic compounded military anxiety. German intelligence reports emphasized the psychological shock. Halder recorded, "This is not merely destruction of buildings. It is the shattering of perceived invulnerability. The Reich is no longer untouchable. Morale, both civilian and military, will suffer." Hitler demanded immediate countermeasures, ordering the Luftwaffe to identify RAF bases in southern England. Generals debated strategy. Some advocated retaliatory bombing, while others warned that escalating attacks would only strengthen British resolve. Admiral Erich Rieder argued pragmatically, "We must assess our losses, strengthen defenses, and strike strategically. Impulse will only endanger our forces further. Meanwhile, communication networks within the High Command were in near constant motion. Dispatches between Berlin, Luftflotte headquarters, and field divisions detailed bomb damage, civilian casualties, and air interception attempts. Conflicting reports created additional tension. Halder commented, "We receive too many fragmented accounts. We are fighting the enemy and our uncertainty simultaneously." In the hours following the raid, German generals' reactions were recorded as a blend of disbelief, tactical assessment, and anger. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock noted, "The audacity of the British has exceeded all expectations. We are forced to reconsider our strategy for homeland defense. Failure is no longer theoretical. It is visible in smoke and fire." The first bombing of Berlin marked a turning point. Hitler's generals understood that the war could now reach the German capital, shaking the foundations of the Third Reich's perceived invulnerability. The morning after the first bombing raid, Berlin smoldered beneath layers of smoke and debris. German generals convened emergency councils to assess the damage and coordinate response measures. General Franz Halder noted in his diary on November 19, 1940, "The city is scarred, both physically and in spirit. Our initial disbelief has given way to the harsh reality. The British strike deeper than we imagined." Field Marshal Walther von Brauchitsch expressed alarm in his report to Hitler. "The enemy has demonstrated that our capital is vulnerable. Civilian panic is spreading, and the disruption to communications and railways is significant." While officers worked to maintain composure, the threat of further raids loomed large, placing immense pressure on the Luftwaffe and air defense networks. Hitler's fury intensified as he reviewed damage assessments and intelligence reports. In meetings with generals, his voice shook with anger and disbelief. "We will not tolerate such audacity. Berlin is the heart of the Reich. Every British bomber that crosses our skies will be met with annihilation." Yet beneath his rage, generals recognized that the strategic balance had shifted. The psychological impact on both military and civilian populations was profound. RAF reconnaissance revealed that industrial districts, rail lines, and communication hubs had sustained damage, though the majority of military installations remained intact. Generals debated whether to concentrate defensive efforts on urban centers or risk spreading resources thinly across all potential targets. General Gerd von Rundstedt recommended a strategic consolidation. "We must prioritize protection where the enemy is most likely to strike again, while maintaining operational readiness for counterattacks." Communications across the German command structure were frenetic. Telegraph lines and radio networks relayed conflicting reports from Berlin, Luftflotte headquarters, and field divisions. Colonel Joachim von Kortzflesch described the scene. "Messages arrive in fragments. Some speak of fires, some of civilian casualties, others of bombers still overhead. Confusion reigns, even among trained officers." The RAF prepared follow-up raids, aware that the psychological effect of striking Berlin extended beyond physical damage. British planners understood that fear, uncertainty, and morale disruption were as powerful as destroying factories. Air Chief Marshal Sir Charles Portal wrote, "Striking the heart of the Reich will send ripples through military and civilian morale alike." Success is measured not only in tons of bombs, but in the reaction of the enemy command. Meanwhile, German generals attempted to maintain control. Anti-aircraft batteries, fighter squadrons, and searchlights engaged incoming bombers, but night raids, cloud cover, and RAF deception tactics limited effectiveness. General Halder observed, "Despite the skill of our pilots, the enemy seems to anticipate our movements. Our defensive measures feel inadequate against their audacity." Reports of civilian panic arrived continuously. Streets filled with people fleeing bombed neighborhoods, fire brigades struggled to contain blazes, and hospitals were overwhelmed with casualties. Hitler's generals debated public communication strategies, balancing the need to maintain morale with the reality of destruction. Admiral Erich Rieder recommended carefully crafted statements. We must project strength while the fires still burn, lest panic undermine the war effort. Hitler, dissatisfied with defensive measures, demanded immediate retaliation. He ordered the Luftwaffe to prepare raids on London and other British cities, signaling the beginning of the Blitz. Generals debated targets, aircraft allocation, and potential consequences. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock cautioned, while retaliation is necessary, we must not underestimate British resilience. Reckless action may galvanize the enemy further. High Command meetings revealed tension between ideology and pragmatism. Hitler demanded swift retribution, while generals emphasized logistical and strategic considerations. The RAF success had exposed vulnerabilities and forced a reassessment of the Luftwaffe's role. General Halder wrote, "Our commanders must reconcile anger with reason. This is a turning point. The enemy has proven capable of striking our core. Our responses will define the course of the conflict." As additional raids continued through November and December 1940, generals' diaries reflected growing concern. General Walther von Reichenau noted, "The enemy's persistence is unnerving. Berlin's defenses are formidable, yet every strike chips away at perceived invincibility. The Führer's temper grows daily." The British raids, relatively limited in destruction, had nonetheless shaken the confidence of Germany's top military minds. Field reports detailed coordination challenges. Flak batteries were overstretched, radar coverage was incomplete, and civilian infrastructure required emergency repair. Colonel Joachim von Kortzfleisch emphasized, "Every hour, new fires, new damage, new reports. Our command structure struggles to adapt in real time. The RAF strikes not just buildings, but nerves and decision-making itself." Through this turmoil, a grim recognition emerged. The Reich's capital was no longer untouchable. Generals like Gerd von Rundstedt and Halder understood that the war had reached a new phase, one in which psychological warfare, long-range bombing, and civilian morale would play decisive roles. Halder noted, "We face a foe who has extended the battlefield beyond conventional lines. Our strategies must evolve or fail." By early 1941, the psychological and strategic impact of the British bombing raids on Berlin had become apparent to Hitler and his generals. The audacity of the Royal Air Force to strike the Reich's capital forced Nazi leaders to confront a reality they had long dismissed. Germany was no longer untouchable. General Franz Halder reflected in his diary, "Our illusions of invulnerability have been shattered. What was once theoretical, the enemy at our gates, is now a reality." Hitler convened repeated meetings with top commanders, including Wilhelm Keitel, Erich Rieder, and Walther von Brauchitsch, to plan retaliation and strengthen defenses. His tone was furious, demanding immediate action. "We will respond in kind. London will burn, and the British will pay in full for this insult to the Reich." Generals, while outwardly compliant, privately expressed concern over the risks of escalating attacks without adequate preparation. The first retaliatory measures focused on strengthening Berlin's defenses. Additional flak batteries were deployed, radar coverage was expanded, and fighter patrols intensified. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt noted, "Our capital must survive not only physically but psychologically. Every officer, soldier, and civilian must understand that we remain strong despite the raids." RAF bombing continued intermittently, emphasizing both precision and unpredictability. British planners targeted industrial districts, transportation hubs, and morale symbols. Colonel Joachim von Kortzfleisch observed, "The raids are surgical yet terrifying. Civilians panic, communications falter, and our command must constantly adapt." German generals recognized that the psychological element was as damaging as the physical destruction. Hitler's response escalated into the full Blitz, with the Luftwaffe tasked with systematic bombing of London and other British cities. Generals debated strategy. Some favored measured retaliation, others supported indiscriminate bombing to break morale. Admiral Erich Reeder warned, "We risk galvanizing the enemy. Strategic precision is preferable to raw vengeance." Nevertheless, Hitler's fury over the attacks on Berlin dictated the aggressive campaign. Within Berlin, generals faced logistical and operational challenges. Emergency services were overwhelmed, communication networks strained, and civilian casualties mounted. General Halder wrote, "We are reacting as best we can, but the enemy's reach tests every system, every officer, and every unit. Our response is measured, but the Reich feels vulnerable." Personal accounts from officers describe disbelief and frustration. Colonel Joachim von Kortzfleisch recalled witnessing the destruction of key industrial districts. "We had believed Berlin untouchable. Now smoke, fire, and sirens fill the streets." Even the Führer's temper cannot mask the growing anxiety among commanders. Despite Hitler's insistence on retaliation, generals worked to maintain order, morale, and strategic control. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock emphasized the need for rational planning. "Chaos in leadership is worse than chaos in the streets. We must control our responses as much as possible to prevent the enemy from exploiting fear." British intelligence noted the German High Command's anxiety, interpreting intercepted communications and observing changes in Luftwaffe deployment. The raid's success extended beyond material damage. It demonstrated that the Reich could be challenged, sowing doubt among its leadership. Air Chief Marshal Sir Charles Portal remarked, "The physical bombs are secondary. The primary effect is the psychological pressure applied to Germany's top echelons." As the Blitz continued into the spring of 1941, the interplay between British bombing and German command decisions defined a new phase of the war. Hitler's generals were forced to adapt strategies for homeland defense, reassess Luftwaffe deployment, and cope with the psychological toll of vulnerability. General Halder summarized, "Our world has changed. The enemy has proven capable of penetrating our heart. The implications for strategy and morale are profound and enduring." Historians recognize that the bombing of Berlin and the subsequent response by Hitler and his generals marked a turning point in World War II. It shattered the myth of invincibility surrounding the Reich, altered Luftwaffe priorities, and directly influenced the scope and intensity of the Blitz. The events reshaped German strategic thinking and highlighted the power of psychological warfare in modern conflict.